So, Hari Om, sitting quietly, taking a deep breath, and as we breathe in, let us chant the Omkar silently, and as we breathe out, we'll Hari Om Tat Sat, Shri Guru Namaha, Shri Ganeshaya Namaha, Saraswati Namaha. Okay, so yesterday I was telling you, and I'll just tell you in a minute in brief what the main thing is, that during 3,500 years ago, there were sages who were practicing exploring their minds and going beyond their minds to explore, to find what is the eventual truth of all existence. That truth being something that has existed before, exists then when they were there, and continues to exist. So this truth that we are trying to find today is the same truth that was there when the ancient sages explored and found them. So among these, there were many rishis or sages. Rishi is a person who has, to whom the truth has been revealed. Along the progress of their own personal evolution, and when they were also teachers, they set down certain rules to help people who were coming behind them towards what they had achieved. Now remember, today we call them gurus and sishyas, all that. But at that time, I think the gurus were extraordinarily humble because they stood along with the disciple in front of the truth or the greatest creative reality in the universe. So then you had a group of people called the Angirasas, and the Angirasas worshipped a deity called Indra, and before that they worshipped a deity called Varuna. Indra and Varuna were being worshipped, and in India at that time was not just a subcontinent, it was part of Aryavarta, which was a conglomeration of the Indian subcontinent, Afghanistan, Punjab, um, Iran, and those areas. So the Indo-Iranians lived together, mixing with each other. There were marriages in between, and there were a lot of toing and froing between them. And they all worshipped that same deity called Varuna. It was not a deity in that sense. They said the supreme is called Varuna, and Varuna is the lord of moral order. Moral order is the rhythm that we talk about. The rhythm is the cosmic order by which everything in the universe is regulated. I told you that yesterday. It could be the planets, the Milky Way, the solar systems, the human beings, the trees, every blade of grass is part of the entire system. And everything is regulated to be created, stay for a while, be sustained, and then to be dissolved back into the source. It's like a warranty period. But the only thing that was always permanent, never dissolved into anything, but was there, is there now, will be there later, was the divine consciousness. And people called it Varuna. Now, along the way, there were many, many disciples who the gurus wanted to help out. And when these disciples came to them, perhaps, and spoke to them, saying, we are not able to relate with the formless divine, then they devised or innovated technique in which you gave a form to the divine. The divine had eyes, ears, nose, just like you and me. So they said, you concentrate on this first, and when you attain a fair amount of focusing, where everything else falls away and you're focusing only on that one, then you will slowly move into the formless state. This was the Angirasa group. Then there was another group that was called the Bhargava group from Bhrigu Muni. And the Bhargava group were not in favor of this innovation, because from their point of view, they thought that if people devised many forms, then at some time they would get stuck with the form, they would stagnate there. And if they are of a tamasic nature, they might destroy each other in the quest of seeing which form is the best, as is happening in many places today. Now, Zarathustra foresaw that, and he decided to stay with the pure form of the yajna, which was in which the fire was the basic messenger of the divine. The fire signifies the aspiration within us, within the human being, and within everything else in nature that is created. And it is formed of the Sankalpa Shakti of the consciousness creates. You can call it he or she or it, whatever you want, because it's beyond time, space, gender, religion. It's a formless energy. This supreme consciousness and in the process, I'm saying his just for understanding, for communication, his fire, the fire within him came out and became the whole universe of everything. Now that fire that was part of his Sankalpa Shakti flowed into every part of creation. And so we carry the divine fire within us. So today when you do a havan or a yajna or a homa, what we are actually doing is we are imitating that particular form or modeling on that form in which the divine with his fire, the pranagni, created the entire universes. And we are saying, please give us that fire also. Inside, awaken it. We have it, but this fire is like an ember. It is just smoldering down. So we are praying when we do the havan that, Lord, please help us ignite the fire within so that it stands steadily and does not come and go from time to time. And because he wanted to make a process in which people did not get sidetracked, he gave the name of Vedas, because Vedas means that which knows, the consciousness that knows, which was a common name for all the higher energies that were talked about when you talked about Agni Vedas, Indra Vedas, like that. He chose the name Vedas, the all-knowing consciousness. Now this Vedas along the way got converted to Vedas, because Medas, Medavi, means the wise. So it was understood that this knowing meant that the person who knew it was wise. Not wise in the ways of being street smart or making money or handling a mob or handling a kingdom, ruling it, not in that sense. The ultimate knowing, knowing the essence of where we come from. In other words, knowing the divine consciousness, supreme consciousness. So this Vedas along the way was Medas, and Medas became Mazda. That was one aspect of it. referring to the supreme consciousness. The other thing was the word asura. Asura was a word that was in great reverence at one time. All the gods that people spoke about, all the higher energies were called asuras. Along the way, when these people, the Angirasa and Bhargava people, had um, a disagreement about the process of reaching the divine with forms and images or just the fire. During that time, the people who were worshipping the formless spirit were called asuras, and the people who were worshipping the images were called devas. So, and this was from the side. And from this side also, the word deva meant that which was not up to the mark. And the asura meant the higher. So you had two clans, they split into two. You had one group in the east, the Indian subcontinent and other places, who gave images and idols and forms to the divine so that it would be a technique to help the students who were not mystics and who were not necessarily highly evolved, but just had, some had curiosity, some had tremendous need to know, some had a fire in them, passion to be part of this something greater. Some thought that if they reached there, they would be powerful and they would be able to get what they wanted. And this was for them, for all the people. Whereas Zarathustra, who came at that time, the first prophet of the Indo-Asian race, he decided that this sort of, this has to be filtered. You cannot have the same practice for every person. So then he came up with this asura that was made into ahura. Ahura Mazda was the name of the supreme in the Iranian area, the Bhargava race. The Iranian place was called Pars in those days, Persia. And the hatchet was also called Parshu. And the person, and there were many people with the names Rama. So when you had a person of this caliber who wanted to keep the spiritual science pure, and one time was very stern and people who were degrading this higher source. This person was called Rama, and because he came from Persia, he was called Parsurama. For Zarathustra from the Indian side, Angirasa side. Now, although these people were the Atharvans, that is the Atharvana side, were the equal, were staying with the pure fire worship. The equivalent of Atharvan is Atrivan, or the fire keeper. So this Veda is called the Bhargava Atharvana Veda, or the Veda of the fire priest. So when earlier on there were three Vedas which were named after what they contained, the Rig, Yajur and Sama. At this time there was a need for a fourth and fifth Veda. Fourth and fifth were clubbed together and they were called the Atharvan Veda. The fourth one was Angirasa Samhita and the fifth one was Bhargava Samhita. Sometimes they were clubbed together. This rivalry persisted through the period of the Brahmanas, that is the later period of the Vedas, until the Vedanta or the Upanishads. Vedanta means the end of the Vedas. it did not mean that the Vedas were over, but people who studied the Vedas and went into it in a deeper way wanted to understand these symbolic meanings of what they were invoking. They also want to have experiences that the mind being a fluid state all the time and not being permanent. So this was a discussion between the gurus and the disciples. And this went on till the Upanishads. And during the Upanishads, because they were so caught up, the ascetic people were so caught up by the understanding of these symbolisms and working with themselves on the inner aspects, the yajna or the fire ceremonies or rituals went into a little bit of a quiet phase in India. It was continued uninterrupted. In a contention over the form. So, okay. So the pranava was the root of all mantras, and the a, u, om, and ma was substituted in the Ahura worship as a, u, n. That is humkar, hum. So Ahura worship was hum. The a was substituted with a and the ma with na. The u remained the same. So omkara, which was the pranava of the Angirasa side, became Hunvara in the side of the Iranian, the Atharvana side. The Parsi Pranava, was adopted by the Shaivas because A is a stronger alphabet than A. Is a mantra for arousing the Kundalini, I told you. Humkaro Ucharanena Eva Samuktaya Param Shivam. So to them, Shiva was represented by the alphabet, the Akshara Hum. The Buddhists, I told you, retained both Om Mani Padme Hum. Then the Shaktas also kept these mantras, the Tantra side, because the Bhrigus and the Angirasas would join the same yajna, but each would utter their mantras in turn, one by one after the other. And then in the Ahura, here to thee I offer this and this. This is what the Rigveda came up with. Ahuridam te paridadamyaham. The Samaveda, I'm sorry. So when yajna fell a little into disuse in the Indian context, a new form of worship came up. That was the puja form, as against the yajna form, where you did not get confused with a whole lot of ceremonies and details about the process of yajna. You had the option of offering the divine just a leaf towards the supreme consciousness, and let it not get distracted by details of the ritual, unless somebody was very well versed in the ritual. Because there were some people who had a very good samskara for that. They were good at rituals. They had the memory for the things. They did it from childhood, and they were able to do the rituals comfortably. But there were many people who could not do the rituals, who could not get the ingredients for the rituals, who did not know all the mantras for the rituals, and they felt left out. And Zarathustra was a prophet who said that there has to be equality, because if the divine consciousness has created every creation in the universe, then every creation is a part of him. He is the father of creation. So every child has a right to the father. Now, this form of puja slowly established itself as a practice regularly, and only some of the priestly classes of the Angirasa group did some of the rituals. Now, the Bhargavas in India, not in Iran, established a new school of bhakti, the devotion to the Supreme. That was called Pancharatra. Pancha is 5, Aratra means worship. It was a cult of the Vaishnavas. It merged with Bhakti cult. And in the Mahabharata, these people are called Sattvatas, referring to them as Sattvic people, because they worshipped without any condition to it. Now, the 44th name of the 100 names, 44th name of the 100 names of Ahura Mazda, or the Supreme in the Iranian context, is Varuna. While this division was going on and each went their way, Tantra was also evolving at that time. It absorbed all that was best in the Mazda Yasna, its entire vitalizing factor. So it revived the faith in the Grihastha. You need not be an ascetic or a sannyasin only before you can reach the divine. That is Grihastha. Then the second is, they said there is a caste equality in worship. No differentiation between one person and another. And this has been followed through. If you see that Vibhishana was a Rakshasa, Jatayu was a bird, the Hanuman was a monkey, Prahlada was an, from the demon family, Dharmavyada was a butcher. So it really did not matter what your work in life was. If you had a thirst for the divine, you had the right to sit in worship. And then, so Grihastha, this is what Tantra did. Caste equality in worship. It maintained the martial spirit. That is, if you were prevented in following your or protecting your progress in sadhana, you had a right to defend yourself. And this also meant an inner defense, that if something within you, a tamasic nature of laziness or doubt or not being clear, all that happened within you, these were also your enemies, and you had a right to go to a guru or somebody of a higher level and ask that person how to fight and win against these negative forces. The other thing that Tantra did, which Zoroastrianism also did, was the reclamation of aborigines. So even today, if you go into any of the villages and aborigine places, they have the same concept, but the forms that they have are very different. Sometimes we don't recognize a form, but if you ask them to explain what that form means, they will explain it to you. And the principle is very similar to what the ultimate truth is. Only thing, it will be amended and modified according to the needs and demands of the geopolitical situation in that part of the world. Now, in Tantra, puja has to be supplemented by a yajna. So when you do a jap, a chant, you also follow it up with a havan. When you do, for example, Chandi part, Vishnu Sahasranama, you do it so many times, you have to do that particular homa to that divine. So Tantra incorporated both. Now, there was a person called Sunahotra. He was an Angirasa with the images. He believed in the images. He moved into the Bhargava cult, and through the images, he came to the formless. When Sunahotra went to the Bhargava side, he came to be called Saunaka. Saunaka is identified with Dhritasmada, who is said to be the compiler of the second book of the Rig Veda. So you can understand how deeply they are intertwined to the extent that the Rig Veda or the Vedic um, terminology for the Iranians and the Vesta is Chandas Upasta, which is the Vedic term and which has now come to be called Zand Avesta. So the other thing is Brihaspati, who was the Acharya of the Angirasa side, sent his son Kacha to learn from Bhrigu, the Bhargava side, the secret sciences that brought immortality to the Bhargava clan. The reason is this. I just want to divert you from one particular situation where I think I said that yesterday, where gurus sometimes will talk about their contemporaries who they might be very good friends with and with whom they will share a great vibratory empathy. But each of them might say that the other one doesn't know enough, don't go there. Because when a student says, shall I go to the X and Y, it means that you are looking for something, expecting something from your guru. You're not getting it, so you're going to somebody else. It becomes marketing. Then you're not a steady person. So the guru, in the effort to make the sadhaka steady, because steadiness is what will give you the result eventually, devised various options. And so each one went in a separate way without joining. When the guru saw that the disciple was not in marketing but needed to get a higher knowledge, he had learned everything he could at one end, then they would send the student to another guru. So the Bhargavas and the Angirasa people constantly, the receptive and mature students went from side to side, from person to person, by the agnya of the guru, not on their own. Now, each stanza talked about the glory of the Mazda in the name of Mahat in Vishwamitra's famous Rigvedic hymn. He sings the glory of Mazda in the name of Mahat. If you remember, the Mahat was one aspect of the cosmic intelligence. That's what is called Mahat, out of which the Ahamkar Buddhi Manas is created in the Sankhya system. Now, Mahat Devanam Asuratvam Ekam. That's what he said. The Mahats, that is the Mazdas and the Devas, along with the Asuratvam, the Devas and the Asuras, the Asura group, according to them, and according to both, he said they are both one. They are not two different gods, they are one. And this helped in reuniting both, and Vishwamitra came to be called a lover of Persia or Aila. Now, Vishwamitra accepted that the name Mazda was the old name for Varuna. You remember, Varuna was called Vedas, Vedas became Medas, Medas became Mazda in the Persian language. Vasishta, who was another person in the Angirasa group, he did not agree with it. He wanted to stay with the Angirasa way of teaching. And you will find Puranas where the Vishwamitra and Vasishta would have constant quarrels here and there. They were great rivals. And all this came only because of one reason: the way a religion had a process, which was the correct process to be followed. Now you must remember, Vasishta was a Brahmana by birth. Vishwamitra was a Kshatriya by birth, but by sadhana he became a Brahmana. What did the Brahmana mean those days? Brahmajnani Brahmanaha, one who knew Brahman, the highest consciousness, he was called a Brahmana. So a person would be, and I'll tell you later about this, you start off as a Shudra, every person. Then you become a Vaishya, then you become a Kshatriya, and you become a Brahmana. And if you are fortunate, then you go beyond these four Varnas and you become a Bhakta, which is called an Ati Varna. But I'll talk to you later. So the outstanding feature of Mazda Yatna is simplicity, rejection of unnecessary ceremonials for the reasons that I told you. And he made because he wanted people to focus on Mazda and not on the details of the religion, details of the ceremony. So he went out and he taught the people. You can see him here with an axe in his hand and a bow in the other. Zoroastrianism was very particular about equality. Nobody was to be excluded from the worship of the divine, of this Ahura. The same thing Tantra says. There is no, anybody can worship the divine because everybody is a child. Now, some Indian sages did understand the value of this. They wanted to incorporate it in their own system, but they couldn't get through because many of the disciples were not mature enough to try this form of practice. And those who were not mature enough would create doubt and confusion in other students. Remember, we are all growing by understanding, exploring our minds. If I said apple to you, somebody who loves apples would say, oh, it's a juicy fruit. Some person who has fallen out of an apple tree while picking fruit as a child would say, that's a horrible tree. It hurts you. Somebody who is making a great financial benefit out of an apple market will say it's a wonderful marketing thing. And you can make a lot of financial benefit out of it. Somebody who has crashed during the corona, and if he's immature with an apple market, he would say, don't go for apples. It's unlucky because you'll get the corona coming after it. So imagine if you had 10 people in one room. Forget in one room. Think of the number of people each of you have in your family. How many people will be on the same page with every opinion that is taken? That is the nature of the human mind being, because a human being has a mind, and the mind has a capacity to jump from branch to branch like a monkey. That's why they call it the monkey mind. And you ask the monkey a question, he will be trying to find it by jumping from one tree to the other. And you would be going behind it, you won't get your answer. The mind is like that. So there's no point in the ultimate stage. In the beginning, it is necessary, but in the ultimate stage, you can't depend on the mind and try exploring it. I remember Swamiji at one time told me in Likya, a few years before he left the body, 4-5 years before that, he just out of the blue, he said, follow your heart, don't follow the mind. The mind can be very treacherous. In other words, don't follow the logic, the analysis, the thinking capacity. Go to your mind. And for many, many years, I associated the mind with emotion until I learned much later that what they call the mind, the heart, is the Atman. And the Atman is the Chitta, which is purified. I will come to that later. So the only way that both were able to unite among the more mature and serious gurus who wanted to help the more mature disciples was to take the form of Rudra, because Rudra Garutwan, that's what he was said. He is a glorious person, but he is also easily propitiated. He is Ashutosh. And the Lord of he was worshipped in India, Punjab, Afghanistan, and Iran. And therefore, he was called Trayambakam, or the son of three mothers. So even backward classes had access to him. Anybody could worship Rudra. So the form was very similar to Ahura Mazda because he was physically strong and mighty like Indra was, the way Indra was portrayed. But he did not have the love and compassion that Varuna could have had. So the Rudra then became Shiva, the kind parent who punishes the devotee. So you learn, not because he was vindictive, but this Shiva was celebrated in the Shweta Ashvatara Upanishad. So, and here it was, Shiva was called a formless state. Eventually, because people went through a state of uh, having Shiva revealed first as a light, a cylindrical, tiny light, they tried to make that also a form, and that also has a form now of the Shivalingam. But Veerashaiva people still worship the formless. Now, the main contribution of Zarathustra was bhakti. He said, unless you love, unless you have an intimacy, you cannot go deep into, you cannot get close to a person. You know, the word in the Old Testament, when they said somebody got married to someone and the husband knew the wife and they had children. So what did they mean by knowing? It's an intimate knowing. It's a knowing that comes out of pure love. So bhakti was a special contribution. And the first Upanishad that brought up the word bhakti was the Shweta Shvatara Upanishad. Now remember, at one time when we were doing the parables, the Sermon on the Mount, I said every guru has two sermons. One is for the lay people and a more subtle one for the disciples. Now, thinking about this on my own, I tried to see that teaching as split into four, not two. And this is how I thought about it. The first type is for the common mind. Anybody who comes, somebody might come out of curiosity to learn. Somebody might come because they're accompanying a friend and the friend says, oh, let's go to the ashram, let's listen. Someone might come because they think that going to the ashram might give you good contacts in the business. So there are many, many reasons for which you come. You don't throw people away. For such a people, the guru will give information. Then when you become a student and you're really interested, you say, I want to learn. Then the guru gives techniques. Once you start doing the technique and you want to go deeper into the technique and you want not for the sake of just doing it because the guru says, that's only part of it, which comes later, but to do it sincerely, whatever the guru tells you to do, because for example, the guru might ask you to stand in the pouring rain and water the garden. You can't argue. He says, do it, you do it. Now, this shows that you have a respect and trust in the guru. So slowly the student is moving into becoming a disciple. When the student becomes a disciple, then this disciple is loved and cared for by the guru. Because the guru knows now this person is not selfish and will take home this that which he knows, not for himself, but so that he might spread it and make the lives of other people become more divine and get closer to their own inner self. That's a selfless person. That is the disciple. And then the disciple also has his own problems. So the disciple gets siddhis because of the various techniques, and more than the techniques, the devotion and the guru kripa. And when these siddhis come, you have to see that the disciple is steadfast. Because today I might say, okay, if I get ₹1,000,000, I'll go and give it to all the COVID patients in the world. But supposing I get ₹1 billion and everything is fine with me, I might think to myself, okay, I said million, so let me give away a million, even if I want to keep my word. The rest of it I can keep. So you see, the ego will always come in, and the ego comes in more and more subtly through the back door. And this I want you to understand, because we are going to take up the spiritual aspect of Zarathustra's teachings to understand this. So, what Zarathustra felt was that the god of the Angiras, who was Indra, was too much of a warrior. For Zarathustra, you don't submit or surrender to somebody out of fear. It doesn't last. But if you surrender out of love, devotion, then it lasts. So Indra grew into Vishnu. And if you remember, somebody asked a question today, and I thought I should answer that in this class. Why is it that Indra is shown as an insecure person, having apsaras dancing around him, going and meddling with other people's issues, um, trying to attract the wife of some great rishi? Why is he doing that? You have to understand that when this was exactly what Zarathustra knew would happen. Because to start with, Indra was god of physical prowess. And physical prowess also meant that he was the being who could provide you your nourishment, protect you from harm, and continuously look after you and see to your needs when you want it. That is also a sort of love. For Zarathustra, that wasn't enough. And if you see the story of Krishna in the Govardhana Giridhari, his father, uh, uh, adoptive father, Nandas, was getting ready for a major ritual, and Krishna, as a child, 5 or 6, he asked, "What are you doing?" Father said, "We are worshipping Indra because Indra gives us the rain, and rain sustains our agriculture. And when you have that, then you can feed the cows. Cows give us milk. Milk is sold. We make our living, and out of the butter we make ghee, and we do the homa." So Krishna said, "Okay." So he does that. So why do you have to worship him? He said, "Because if you don't, he'll get angry. You see, he won't let us have rain." So Krishna said, "Trust me. Don't worship the Indra this year. Let's worship the Govardhan hills, because these hills are what give you the plantation, and this is where you graze your cows, and this is where you get your sustenance. So the Govardhan is more um, valid than Indra." Now, what was Krishna doing? He was he was a child, and he was telling these simple people, they were not scholars, they were not pandits, but they loved him. So they trusted him, and he was telling them, "Don't worship Indra now." Because who is Indra? Indra is the mind. Indra is the king of the sense organs, the Indriyas. So you have different Indriyas, Karmendriyas, Jnanendriyas, and these Indriyas are called energies, and they are called Devas. So speech has fire, your prana, when you breathe, the touch has space and air in it. So you have 5 Panchabhutas, the 5 elements out of which the physical body, and to a certain extent your mind also, is made up of. These 5 are the um, earth, water, fire, air, space. These 5 are the Jnanendriyas, and their qualities are the Karmendriya, Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas. They are for cognition, and the hands, feet, tongue for talking, the eliminative organs and the generative organs. These are for various purposes that help human beings live. Now, the king of all these Indriyas is Indra. Why is he called the king? Because the king commands and the people act accordingly. It's your mind that tells your eyes, "Look at that flower there. Your eyes might stray to a flower and it might go on, but the mind will say, isn't that beautiful? Let's go pick one. Or let's go and find where the sapling has got so that we can plant one in our house and then we can say it's my tree. So you see, the mind acts according to the ahamkar. So when this mind becomes enlightened, the enlightened mind is called Indra, which then gets an idea of self-realization. Okay, so if I use the power of this mind, there is much that I can get. And here the Indra uses this power for, because he knows that the power is there, he knows he is empowered, and he looks at somebody else and he compares himself. That is the greatest problem we have as human beings. We compare ourselves with the other person and we say, oh, he's got something better. He's got a company. You want to know, how do you run that company? How do you get a profit that I didn't get? You don't want to know how to get a profit on your own. You want to know how you get something that, how he got something that you didn't get. I said, have you seen this man's wife? What a gem. She is so beautiful. She listens to him, etc., etc. How come I didn't get that? So all this moha, mada, lobha, krodha, all this come out of the raga, dvesha, the two kleshas. Now, even the enlightened mind has its shortcomings. So when Indra does so many sacrifices and he gets so many siddhis, and he has the power to control the karmendriyas and jnanendriyas of the universe, he's called Indra. However, the power gives him the pride, the vanity that I must be very powerful. Wow, see what a lot I can do. So you see, sometimes when you go and do something good, you want to stand and take a photograph to show that you are the one who has done it. Now, what happens at that point? Krishna says, no, pray to the Govardhan. So he's moving people away from the form that they are worshipping, the form which is a projection of their own mind, into a hill which is formless. You've got the form of the hill, but not talking of the hill to be worshipped. You're talking of the quality of the hill to sustain. It's a quality of the hill to sustain that you are thanking. So then the story, goes that Indra was very angry, and then Indra poured rain and rain, that he was not propitiated, and Govardhana hill, and that too by a chit of a kid who can tell all these people who've been worshipping him for centuries, and now suddenly they are listening to one little kid, 5 years old. And what do these people think they are? Now you see how power corrupts. They say power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, how do you handle that aspect? This is what Zarathustra was saying. It's all good to have power that gives you that quality. But now, here is Indra wreaking vengeance on people who did not pray to him. So he poured and poured thunder and rain and washed away the village. But Krishna took the mountain Govardhana on his little finger. His bhakti, remember this, I'm talking of Krishna. Krishna's love, his bhakti for all of creation, the people who lived in Govardhana, transferred itself into the Govardhana hills. So the hills rose up and stood on his little finger and protected the people who lived near the Govardhana hills. And when Indra got tired after 8 or 9 days, he realized there's something more to all this. This is not just a little boy. He must be something greater than me. That means he's greater than the enlightened mind. So then he goes, and then it is he who crowns Krishna with the title of Govinda, which you hear everybody saying Govinda, Govinda. Go means Pranava, the Omkar or the Humkar, the original vibration. Om means light, illumination from which the sound comes. And then Om also means the Pranavagni, the Sankalpa Shakti of the divine that is at the core of your heart, the Chitta, which tells you this is your destiny. Don't go for anything inferior. So so that is why even the enlightened mind, many people became enlightened in that time. So Zoroaster thought that if people became enlightened and they are being corrupted by their own enlightenment, then they need something else. And what is it that you can give that makes a person be able to surrender to a higher level? Otherwise, you can stand and say, when you say Aham Brahmasmi, it is only a declaration of, hey, I've understood how I'm a part of this Brahman. It doesn't mean I'm the supreme consciousness and everything else is beneath me. No, it means that I've understood that everything is part of it. You, me, the trees, the plants, the chair on which you're sitting, everything is has the divine consciousness within it. And understanding that is called the self-realization. Once you understand it and you become enlightened, you will still know that even if you can create a world, which you could, Vishwamitra created a whole world for a king who wanted to go bodily to Swarga and couldn't, Trishanku. He created. Even when you have that, you have to have the humility to know that this is still only a siddhi. It is not the ultimate. You have to continue the journey. And that is why Patanjali says, if you get all these siddhis, anima, garima, and other things, lagima, you do not stop there, you continue. For the sake of continuing, Krishna came at that time, and what he did was, he realized that people could not surrender as a technique. Now people say, how to surrender? How can we surrender? It is not a technique. The first thing you have to learn is to love. Learn to love. If you love somebody, you'll surrender to that someone. Don't we surrender to our children when they are babies? You wash their diapers. Would you do that when they are grown up or to anybody else? But a doctor will do it when he goes to a COVID patient or any other patient who has fast motion in his clothes. He will clean him up. Why? Because he loves who he is serving. So first, if we learn to love, that love gives you the capacity to surrender, because the Atma, the quality of Atma is love. And the Atma is surrenders on its own. You cannot make somebody surrender. You can make somebody submit. You can make somebody put on an act, but you cannot make surrender happen. It happens spontaneously when you love. So, coming to that, for Zarathustra, empowerment should not make you lose your perspective. Now we are talking of women's empowerment, men's empowerment. All these actually have no value in social life. It's okay, nice for what we talk about and things, but there is no empowerment like the Atma empowerment. Once you have the devotion to the divine and your Atma is empowered, you're no more male or female, you're no more Parsi, Hindu, Muslim, you're no more Indian, Persian, American, you are just the soul. And that soul is infinite, and it has the capacity to help other souls on the way transform by sheer loving. So the next assimilation, what they did was, the divinity that was called Vishnu became Hari Medas, because Hari also is the Hara is Shiva, Hari is Vishnu. They both come from the Akshara Ha, which was the Pranava Hum for the Zoroastrians. That's why you say Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namo Narayanaya. The Ha is very important. And this Vishnu was called Hari Medas. Hari means that which draws you irresistibly towards itself without your doing anything. You can't stop it. Once you turn around and move towards this loving divine, he won't let you go. He's accepted you as his, and you cannot turn back. That is why Jesus says, once you put your hand on the plow, there is no turning back. You can't. You will be drawn to the other side. Somebody once, many years ago, who was a um, friend and a student for a while, and then went to the Sufi way, among other things. He once said, this is the seduction of the spiritual life. Once you go into the spiritual life, you can't go anywhere else. So that is Hari. Hari made us, over a period of time, became the Satya Narayana. Satya means the true Narayana, not the one that you might see just with the Shankha and Chakra and sitting on a serpent with somebody at his feet. You got to understand the symbolism and know that that particular form is pointing to something formless, which is in everything in creation. So, having said that, and before we go into the religion part of it, the next assimilation was made by Mahamuni Nanak. He did this after the influx of the Muslim invasions. Now, at this time, I want to say one thing. The Muslims, it was not that everybody in the Islamic society went around invading. And it also did not mean that those who made conquests did it for an ulterior purpose. It so happened in history, you'll find out that when the soldiers had no work to do, the caliphs would send them out to go and fight in other countries, so that they would keep them busy and they wouldn't get sidetracked, and then they would establish their kingdom there in that country. And it started by being a trading society. The first Muslims who came to India, for example, were okay. So the first who came to India were people who came for trading and mercy purposes. They were time and also time went by. You had a few leaders both here and there, and some of the leaders were cruel, were tamasic by nature, and they were immature. They didn't understand the glory of Islam. So power and the wealth that came, just like so many Indians did and still do today. We all do it because tamas, rajas, and sattva are part of everything in nature. So in the beginning, so you will realize now then what happened. So Nanak said that the Sufism, that was the inner aspect of the spiritual aspect of Islam, which was brought in by Hazrat Ali, because it was to him that Hazrat Muhammad is a dedication, and he continue this. It was not for everybody, because the biggest mess that this creation has ever known. But that's not my forte. Okay. So in the same way, there were people who said, I'd rather go to a lecture on economics than go and attend something about the Atma and knowing how to live. That's not my interest. So happened, and they're everywhere in the universe. And mind you, most of them are humans, not very many animals. Because human beings started to compare. Animals don't compare. You'll never see a lion coming and saying, I want to be the president of the United States. You won't find a leopard that comes and says that I don't feel like hunting. Can I be just a laborer today? You won't. The only human being will compare. This is our samskara. And why is that samskara coming? Because compare yourself with yourself and find that you can be better than you are now. That was the reason comparison was given. So anyway, he said the Sufism is nothing else than the Chishti of the Gatha. He welcomed it as the message of the Atharvana Veda. He founded a new sect, the Sikh Sangat, which did not think in Arabic terms. And you have to say that this was a great glory of Nanak. People like this appear spiritual degrading and some have seen later. This is a cry from the heart of the universe for a better world, and the divine works through better people. And like this, you will get every now and then somebody coming to bring peace and show spirituality. That is how years after Zarathustra, then you had the rishis, then you had Buddha, then you had Jesus, and after Jesus you had Muhammad, and like this it goes. The voice of consciousness, the cry from the heart will always bring the answer from the heart of the divine. So he said that Chishti, he restored Chishti to its original situation as a branch of the Vedic religion, and he calls it the Veda of Atharvan Zarathustra. He even went so far as to tell Muslim Sufis that they are actually following the principles of the Atharvana Veda. Only they have named that they've changed the name of Khuda. Khuda is an Iranian name, Persian name for God, to Allah. There is no competition here. This is all creation. And because there was a king called Kavya Ushanas, Kavi Kavaus. So he obviously went through the Angirasa cult, and then he evolved into the Bhargava cult. From the form, he was able to reach the formless because of his bhakti. And because of that, Krishna, in appreciation in the Bhagavad Gita, when he says, and I, he's not talking of him, the cowherd boy who was born in the Yadava clan. God is speaking through him, like God is speaking through Zarathustra. God spoke through Buddha. God spoke through Christ. God spoke through Muhammad. And God will speak through every being that is crying out for him. Nobody was born that way, but all of you will have it happening as a collective matter. So this Krishna says, among Kavinam Ushanaha, that is, among the Kavis, he is one who sees, he has taken both. They make everything, you synthesize. That's what is called a female aspect of the Atma. You have synthesized everything and received. Like one receives any song. So the woman, yesterday somebody put something on WhatsApp, the woman is able to receive, the man gives. This is how we see things in the outer world. But every man has a woman inside, and every woman has a man inside. The feminine aspect of you is a receptive. And here they are saying that Zarathustra says that the one has to have that devotion, because only when you have that devotion, you will be able to synthesize two things that you see as opposites, which you can't understand logically. For example, there are times when you love somebody very dearly, but you can hate that same person when they do something terrible against you. You can hate and love the same person and not understand why it happens. When you go to higher level, you see the mind is functioning that way, not the soul. Mind is functioning that way, and both when it gets absorbed in the soul, it is neither hate nor love the way you understand it. So all opposites get absorbed when you move towards the immortality of your soul. Having said that, now we are coming to the Zarathustra into growing into maturity. He started teaching them what was spiritual, like Jesus taught people how to pray. We all think we are praying, but how to pray is a very specific exercise. You have to bring God to your heart, to your chitta, with love, with devotion. That divinity has to be the only thing that draws your attention. Anything else other than the divine is inferior. Understanding it, you start with karma yoga. When you do karma yoga, you usually we get upset with people who are rude to us where we are working, or nasty to us, they are lazy. But if you think of this person, if you start karma yoga with the view that everything, the divine is in me, I belong to him, he belongs to me, then what do? Then when somebody yells at you also, in the beginning, you don't get upset. You say, oh, maybe he's going through a difficult phase. You don't think it is at you, because that is the divine energy.
Hariom,
The
sorry.
way, because again, continue.
Yes, we missed that part. You don't get upset because.
So the body and mind, the body and mind listen to the ego, the ahankara, then you don't like that person, even if it was a friend earlier on. So when you move into karma yoga, it is not that you put a blanket on the ground for somebody to sit or water the garden or wash vessels in the ashram. No, that is not karma yoga. Karma yoga is the act of using physical work to reduce your karmas. What are the karmas? The karmas are the acts that you have chosen to do earlier and which are bringing you consequences today. If I choose that people should always be nice to me, then I might get angry with somebody who is rude to me. Then I keep that person as an enemy in my mind. Now, if I see somebody who is wearing the same or who has some unpleasant to me. So when you watch this is what is called awareness. Then you say, why am I getting angry with this person? This person has nothing to do with what happened years ago with the other person. Even then, who knows what was the reason? So you're getting to be a little wiser and more refined. When you get wiser, slowly like this, you start, even if somebody shouts at you, you're pleasant to them. You don't feel upset on the inside. So when you're present to them, you're slowly getting rid of the old karmas, which have stimulated the vasana of fear and anger and animosity. So you see, more than 95% of the world today is reacting, not at all responding.
Swamiji, more than 95% of the world
karma.
is reacting, not responding.
No, responding. No, karma yoga is reacting, not responding. But when you start responding instead of reacting, you are becoming responsible. So when you have that sort of an activity, that is why karma yoga is given so much of an emphasis in many ashrams. Then you slowly move towards chitta shuddhi. You replace the guru or the divinity or your ishta devata in the place where all your conditioned biases and prejudices took away so much of your prana. So slowly, when all the other things are seen as inferior and fall away, you will become one-pointed. Then that is dhyana yoga. You start meditating. Now, when you meditate, the chitta is not only what is in your life today. The chitta contains all the reactions that all beings, including animals and plants, have gone through in the course of evolution until the human species today. So that is why in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali will start with Atha Yoganushasana. That means now the discipline of yoga. Why discipline gives you discipleship? And why does he say now? It's not like, you just go to an ashram and you pick up an asana, then you learn how to do this multiple you enter a company, get a certificate or for many days and everybody is perfect. Swami Nanda used to say, do you want to be a glorified rubber bat? Now I'm saying this not because I am, as some people think, bringing down asana and pranayama. I'm saying the purpose for asana and pranayama is so that we learn stiram sukham asanam. That um, because once you remove all the superficial um, disturbances, the deep-rooted ones from the collective consciousness will come up, the fears, the anger, the hatred, which has gone through civilization, through culture, all that will come up. And then your techniques and your chanting and the mantras given to you, that is when the guru comes in and gives you a certain mantra and says, now do this mantra. And when you do the mantras, then that for some time takes your mind away from these aspects, and you're replacing the vasanas that have been stimulated by your acts. You're vasanas by the positive vibrations of certain chanting. So this is why Zarathustra said, don't get caught up with different images and things. Just sit with one thing and go on. So now the person that means two basic facts. One is belief in the ultimate Brahman, and one is belief in the soul. These are two basic facts, and these were called along with seven, along with others.
Swamiji, Swamiji, sorry to interrupt you. Is it possible to move to a location with better connectivity?
Realize So when you become an Anjaneya, you don't say, wow, how smart I was, I went and found Sita. But for me, Rama wouldn't have found Sita. He never does that. He comes back and he says, I'm so Guru Kripa, because of Bhagavad Kripa, then what happens? You surrender because you're so grateful. So never ask anybody how to surrender. You don't, there is no, you first learn to love. When you first learn to love, surrender will happen by itself. So this is the, and this is when must say, when you know the ideal would enter in peace. So you see, God of Mazda, because without his kripa, I cannot love him. He has to put um, that idea in my mind, because I know that I'm a vehicle, I'm an instrument. All that you give me is not mine. Everything is yours. So he disapproved of Indra because it gave the person the siddhi of the mind. And then when you get the siddhi of the mind without realizing, when you worship yourself, thinking, I'm so wonderful, you are worshipping your mind and you have to go beyond the mind. So he approved of Varuna because of his lofty moral ideal. So at that time, he got the Sana and Nirguna. And then in adopting the who of the Masnavi of Rumi, because Rumi brought back the whom. Because Rumi was a Sufi, Sufi is Chishti, Chishti is Atharvan. So Islam raised the caliber, its caliber from being just a physical nation that could do so many things wonderfully, to being a spirit, to going into a spiritual dimension, both personally and impersonally. So here Rumi will say that Gatha is Vedanta par excellence. So now we come to the Amesha Spenta. There are a class of 7 divine entities. They are called the Amesha Spenta. And in the Vedic language, they are called Vishve Amritas. Vishve Amritas, the literal meaning is the universal or immortal vibrations. And these in Sanskrit, it's called Amrit Spanda, the same thing. Amrit means no death, immortality, Mrityu. Immortality, the vibrations of immortality. That is, it creates something out of your body and your mind, which are transient. Body and mind decay, they go. Even Zarathustra's body went, Adi Shankara's body went, Buddha's body went. But what was alive was the Atma. And understanding this Atma, the vibrations that you get, the Amrit Spanda was called Amesha Spenta. Now, according to Zarathustra, there are a class of 7 divine entities from Ahura Mazda, the Supreme. Each are great moral qualities which mortals should strive to attain. So these are the first 7 entities from the uncreated creator. Please understand this, the creator that you call Ahura Mazda or Brahma or Allah, that being was not created. That being was always there. That being which was always there, never born, never dies, that being creates. So he is the uncreated creator, and from whom all subsequent creation happened. Spenta is a characteristic word which means holy, bounteous, furthering. Kalyana. Kalyana means the auspicious aspects of the divine. So what do they say? There are 3 words that they use. And I'll come to the Amesha Spenta. So the three words that they use were Humta, Hukta, and Huvarshta. It meant thoughts, words, and deeds which were divine. Divine means in alignment with what the Supreme has given as the Agni within you. So in the Gatha, the most important, the lowest rung is the Asha, which is associated with wisdom. And I'll explain that to you in a little while. Your thoughts, words, and deeds should be saturated with righteousness. Righteousness is what Veda calls dharma. And how do we know what is right, what is not right? That's what most people say. And then we will find that many, many prophets along the way have given us the easy way to understand what is right, what is not right. Jesus calls it the golden rule. Do unto others what you would that others would do unto you. That is, don't do something to somebody that you wouldn't like them to do to you. So be selfless, practice ahimsa. These are the yamas. Learn from yourself how you are reacting to people, how you can hurt people, how you can damage people's faith, how you can destroy people's uh, love for something beautiful, how you can demoralize a whole culture by putting it down just because somebody, one person has a thought that is not good. And the thought brings out a word, and the word brings forth an action. So be careful of your thought, word, and deed. That is these three that um, we are talking about. And let me just tell you a little bit about the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is very similar to what is said here. In the Brihadaranya Upanishad, there is a section which says that the Atma, the soul, manifests in the human body. Its Swarupas are only 6 forms. You have an Atma, I have an Atma, somebody else has an Atma. Every being in the world has an Atma or a soul because it is the divine Sankalpa Shakti. When he creates a fire within him, enters you. So when you say the Atma's form, you don't know how the Atma manifests itself. You say body, mind, but I haven't seen the Atma. So how do I know there is an Atma? So they'll say the Atma also has certain forms. It has 6 forms. What are the forms? First form is consciousness, prajna. You know you're conscious, otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here talking. So that is consciousness is not the part of the body, because your body can be there, it can be decaying, it can be in coma, it need not be conscious. It may be a dead body looking good, but it's not conscious. Consciousness is an aspect of the Atma. Second is Priyam. Priyam means love. And what love is this to start with? The love is the will to live. You're afraid of being extinguished. Abhinivesha. So everything starts with the fear of extinction. Away. The will to love is brought when will to live. You start looking for that something. Will my power help me to live? Many people with Corona would have understood this. Would my musical abilities keep me immortal? Will my wealth keep me immortal? If I have a large following, you saw in the Kumbh Mela, one of the Akhada Acharyas passed away. If I am holy in the external sense, would that prevent me from dying? No. So when you have the will to love, the third one comes into effect, and that is Satyam. What is Satyam? You learn to understand reality or the truth. Reverence for the truth comes in. That is the third way the Atma Swarupa is. What is reverence for the truth? Because you know this something is permanent. It doesn't go away at all. But the other things are transient, they move away. This happens only through Guru Kripa. Now, when you find the inklings of Satyam, when your Atma takes the form of Satyam, you will find that a person who lives with Satyam, like Harishchandra, this is why these stories are said. You live with Satyam, Satyam protects you, and you don't find yourself wanting for anything. So you go into Ananda or bliss. You're content. Why? Because you're with the truth. Truth is a divine consciousness. And what is truth? It is unlimited. Everything is contained in that. When everything is contained, why do you need, and you are merged with it, you don't need anything else. So you get Ananda or bliss. From Ananda or bliss, you move into seeing that this bliss is not at all coming down. You have little irritations here and there, but your sense of fulfillment is there all the time. Then you realize the next Swarupa of the Atma, Ananta or endlessness. You find it always there and you wonder where is it coming from. But anyway, irrespective of anything, this love is flowing through you. And the sixth and the Swarupa of the Atma is a state of enduring steadfastness. You're calm, you persevere no matter what difficulties comes. Look at Ibrahim, who was ready to sacrifice Ishmael, his firstborn son, Abraham. And that is sthiti, the state of steadfastness. Then you're called a yogi. So why I told you this is because I'm coming to the Amesha Spenta. And we are going to go over this little by little, one by one. Now, the first one here in the is Asha or rectitude. It belongs to the ethical sphere because from the point of view of Zarathustra, if you are not honest, as yesterday I told you, with yourself, you will continue to fool yourself along the way and you'll get sidetracked. I'll come to that. Just after this, I'll come to that. I'll tell you when, next, but not now. Let's finish our Mesa Spentas and I'll tell you. So, the first one that you find is Asha. Asha is the principle of ethics, where you learn to follow the golden rule through Karma Yoga, where you learn to be selfless over a period of time. And that is why yoga starts with the yamas. Ahimsa, we say, ahimsa paramo dharma. We live life with choices. And how do we choose? It all depends upon our theory of about the end of life, in reference to which the choice is made and which gives value to the choice. If I think I'm going to live only for 20 years, then I might try to have a good time, have fun, because before the end. If I know that I'm going to live till 70 or 80, I might say, let me make wealth so I can leave it to my children or to an ashram or something like that. This is how we choose. If I know that I'm immortal, I don't need to be afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of anyone. So the person who's with dharma will, who gets chitta shuddhi, will not have any fear of anything or anybody anywhere in the world. So knowing this, he said, the righteousness is the core of ethics. That is a dharma that's called Asha. And it's at the bottom of the ladder of Amesha Spentas. Asha is the same as the Rita of the Veda. And the Veda says, Rig Veda, Ta Karma Ashtar Asmaihi. Through Rhythm, the multiplicity of Prakriti is reduced to a unity. How do I say this? You find that everything, the multiplicity, the diversity in the world, they're all following one cycle. Even if you have a cyclone here, it is because something has been out of alignment and nature is coming back to put it in order. So eventually, everything in creation is following the of the Supreme. To do something right because it's right, irrespective of the fruits or consequences. This is what Krishna says in the Gita also. He says, Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. You have to do your duty. You can't just sit back and say, God will wash that vessel for me. You have to do what you have to do. But doesn't matter if it comes out good or bad. That is his will. So the divine sankalpam, like it became the swarupam of the Atma, you know, the golden rule of Christ that I said, that is called the next spenta, and that is called the Vohu Manas. Vohu Manaha, you can see the red one. They are all shown as beings. There are three um, three female and three what do you call it? Male. I might change the number as I go on because I'm bad with numbers. And there are four masculine qualities. This rectitude, this belonging to the ethical sphere, Asha, Bohu Manas, which is your conscience. It tells you, be nice to the other person. You don't want to get him to treat you like you are treating him. Then the third one is Kshatram. Kshatram is detachment, non-challenge. That is, you're doing karma yoga and you're doing it not because you want somebody to appreciate you, somebody to give you a certificate, somebody to give you an award, or the guru to pat you on your shoulder or give you an extra mantra or anything. You're not doing for that. You're doing it for itself. That is the Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. I remember Swami Satyananda saying once, that is equanimity. Doesn't matter what the fruit of what you're doing is. He is seeing it, the divine is seeing it from a much larger angle. Today, if you have a traffic, what do you call it, jam in Bangalore, and people are grumbling and grumbling, that's doing. And because of that, you get a metro. People will use their brains to see how we can go beyond this difficulty. And that is why difficulty comes. So Kshatram doesn't matter what it is he who gives it. Let me learn to handle it. So when you work with Karma Yoga, with Asha, rectitude, Bahumanas, conscience, Kshatram, non-attachment to the fruits, the Manas, the Buddhi, the physical body, of course, and the Manas, Buddhi, and the Chitta work with the right attitude. And as I told you, you get Chitta Shuddhi with this. And because of Chitta Shuddhi, what happens? You give up the inferior desires and you get faith in something greater. And this faith is the beginning of Chitta Shuddhi. So there's something else that protects me. You'll say, when I'm in a difficult state, something comes to help me, something comes to teach me. You realize this and you call it a miracle, but it's a natural aspect of rhythm. Now, when you have, and faith is called Almighty, then when you have the faith, then you work on that by Dhyana Yoga, and you realize that there is a thing, a place that is called your soul. Then you know that you have met your soul. Now you know the fact that there is an Atma is a truth. Now you're moving into another dimension, and that is called the spiritual dimension, Dhyana Yoga. Over a period of time, when you're friendly with your soul and you work with the soul, not necessarily with your mind. Remember times when Swami Satyananda would be sitting in Rikya and he would call Swami Satsangi and say, you go so many kilometers away, there is a tree, under a tree, there is a woman and a child sitting. That woman has just lost her home, bring them here. And she would be amazed, Swami Satsangi. She said, there is no television here, there is no phone here. How would Swamiji know about these things? Because the soul does not stay only in one place. The soul has a capacity of clairvoyance, clairaudience. Why? Because the soul does not need the indriyas to work. We'll come to that. So the Kshatram is getting the better of fear, and it gives you the strength to pursue the right. Buddha called Kshatram as the conquest of desire. He calls it Tanakshaya. Tanha is thirst. What is the thirst? Thirst is for something better. And it gives you the power to stay on the right path, irrespective of the um, fulfillment of a desire. So this is actually the foundation of Buddhism also. So you see how many places Zarathustra has influence. Why? Because the Guru Tattva is not confined to any one region, one cult, time, space, male, female, language. No, comes in different forms at different times. So these are the three ethical ameshas that I spoke to you about. Then you have, Zarathustra says, idealism is the best basis of belief in God. Because what is your ideal? You're inspired by seeing that some energy has created this entire universe. It's a tremendous power. And there is a skill because the same energy has developed delicate instruments like the ear, the eye, which are so instinctive to a person and so different person to person. Now, what Zarathustra says is what matters more is the character of that person. For example, Galileo or any of the great inventors will evoke admiration in us. But when you come to a Buddha or a Christ, it evokes love and reverence, not just admiration. So ideals are present in every heart, he says. Latent religion, uh, they are latent, and religion actualizes all these ideals. Everybody has ideals, even the people who are cynical and who say there's no world and there's nothing wonderful in the universe. It's people who've been hurt or who are afraid and have got stuck there and have not explored further. So all prophets had realized this to the greatest extent. That's why we have such great reverence for them. A man can teach his highest destiny in walking in imitation of the prophet. So the call of religion actually is to man to raise himself above himself. Raise man to God's level. Don't bring down God to man's level. That's why the Greek religion failed, because they brought all the gods to the human level, and there were jealousies and fighting, and they stayed there. They didn't try to go deeper to understand how the mind can work. Then the fourth one is Armaiti or faith. Faith should not be confused with superstition or belief. It's not blind belief. We have to remember that people have struggled lifetimes to find the truth, like the rishis of the past, even the scientists of today. So don't trivialize their efforts. Recently, you had a holy man saying that allopathic medicine is rubbish. Don't trivialize somebody else's efforts. You keep an open mind, you explore with an open mind, with trust in their words, because they've worked with it. After exploration, if you find that it is wrong, then you're entitled to disbelieve it. But when somebody has struggled and given their lives in working with something, you can do the same experiment the correct way with faith in their words. Don't be cynical about the words. This is what is called faith or Armaiti. Now you have fifth and sixth spentas. These are the beliefs that Armaiti expects us to adopt. Okay. So what does it expect us to adopt? The belief, the faith, by doing the exercise, by trusting the words of those who have gone before, and seeing that you get a certain result. And if the result can be verified in the same way, then you have to have two more. What is it that you have to adopt? Aurvitat and Amerita. That is belief in one's own soul. Not because somebody said it, not because Swami Satyanand said it. Swami Satyanand says there is an Atma. You practice this, and you'll find it. If you don't find it, then maybe I'm wrong or you haven't done it the right way. That's what every guru will say. Belief in one's own soul and belief in the cosmic soul, Atma and Paramatma. So there is in us the possibility of a higher consciousness than that of the mind. Our mental consciousness is dependent on the Indriyas. That's why Indra is king of Indriyas. But yogis with soul consciousness who go beyond that don't depend upon Indriyas. They have telepathy, clairvoyance, all the occult powers. They are not myths. And this is what Sri Aurobindo spoke of as supramental consciousness, which is the coming thing, he said at that time. When you say the implication of the possibility of supramental consciousness means one does not need to depend upon the Indriyas for its existence. Now think of the implication. It does not need to depend on a physical organ for its existence, that supramental consciousness. In other words, the soul, which is a supramental consciousness, can survive death. And it is through this that Zarathustra showed the first glimpse of immortality. Zarathustra said there is a fundamental reality lying at the root of every object. It is an eternal principle from which the world arises, subsists, and returns to on dissolution. This is not an emptiness. If it was, it is an emptiness that's pregnant with the universe. If we deny the existence of Brahman or Vahman, as he called it, we would be denying our own existence. So the consciousness of Brahman is different from our mental consciousness. Time and space cannot restrict its scope. It is not dependent on Indriyas or the brain. There is no tinge of grief in the superconscious. Why? Grief is created by the feeling of want. I want this, I want that. But the supreme consciousness, Brahman, being infinite, nothing is wanting. Consciousness is always full of bliss, ananda. So, Gata says there that Shnum Masdo Brahmamayi. The bliss of Mazda is the bliss of Brahman. And they say in the Panchadashi is a very important scripture of Vedanta. And it says that it was Bhrigu, the preceptor of the Asuras, who first learned from his father Varuna the secret of the whole universe, how it evolved out of Ananda or bliss. So, having said this, some of which I have done yesterday also. The other person who spoke about it was Kabir. So always when you see a prophet, he never comes to religion that being comes from. So we have to remember that always. And if somebody says that God is telling me to kill so and so because I'm going to get glory in heaven, you can know that this person may be having certain siddhis because he has put his effort into killing or something. Whichever job you do, if you do it with your whole heart, you become proficient. But that person is not necessarily fully enlightened. Because when you are fully enlightened and you move into being a yogi, a true yogi who merges with the soul, with the cosmic soul, that is the Atma, is merged with the Paramatma, nothing can come out of it beyond love, because that is what he floods you with. Now, the other picture, Shivani, that'll be the last. It's called the Faravahar or the Ashokarohar. This is a group. Just look at this. This one. Now, this is something like a logo or a symbol of Iran. And it originally came from Mesopotamia, and people did not know what the symbol meant in those days, or perhaps if they knew, they didn't talk about it. However, after the 20th century, a few people interpreted it as, if you see that number 1 is the figure of an old man. It represents the wisdom of age. Now, in ordinary language, as in Hinduism, Christianity, anything for social purposes, we'll say your parents have done so much for you, your grandparents have brought up your parents. So you have to respect the old people. They will not tell you something wrong. Follow what they are saying. That is one part. You have to be grateful and you have to respect them for what they have given you, a body in which you can attain self-realization. But there is something more. If you think of who would be the oldest in your family, think of it, would be a grandfather, a great grandfather. I know Zoroastrians live very long. Some of my friends were old when I met them and I was young, and they are still going strong. And they are wonderful people. But that apart, who's the oldest in your family, in your kula? The oldest in your family is Zarathustra. He is your family. And is still alive, that part of him which matters. So this figure of the old man represents the wisdom of age. Now you have two wings on two sides. It's number 2. You'll see that and each of it has 3 main feathers. And these represent the Humta, the Hukta, and the Huvarshta. Good thoughts, good words, good deeds. 2, that is. Now the third part, where is it? Down. You'll see the third part down. It's the opposite direction. It is those actions that you do, the opposite of Amesha Spentas, the opposite of an ethical life, which creates misery. Somewhere it is said that fear of misery makes you sin, and sin makes you miserable. Sin means missing the spot, missing the, in archery, you miss the bullseye. That's called a sin. It is not good or bad. It's just that it makes you suffer because you don't reach the beginning. Then you have number 4. If you see down, there are 2 loops, like twirls, this side and that side, like little tails. These are the positive and negative forces. The positive force is the one which is turned towards the face, and the negative one is towards the back. So what they are saying through the symbol is proceed towards the good, turn away from the bad. If you know that somebody is doing adharma or steeped in adharma or doing something that creates harm to some people, don't even...
That work didn't end up going.
Can you hear me? Okay. Don't even ask them to do something good, because you won't be capable of it. Then number 5 is a ring. You see that ring, the center to which the 2 loops are attached. And the ring is also what you see in the person's hand. This ring, this is what I was thinking of when somebody sent me the image of the sun today with that major ring of rainbow all around it, and like a donut in the middle. This ring is the eternal nature of the soul. It is the eternity of the universality. And you see one hand points up, meaning that only one direction to choose in life, towards the divine. And the ring in the hand explains loyalty and faithfulness. You will see that most often, if a Parsi gives a promise, it's like a ring that cannot be broken. They will not break a promise. Now you will see there is the same ring, which is a huge ring, which is locked in the located in the Farohar's trunk. This is the immortality of the spirit. The spirit that they say is there. There is no beginning, no end to it. And the more one tries to promote there forever, that is, more you try to do good things, think good things, speak good things, do good deeds, the more the spirit will be elevated in the world after the body is discarded. For that reason, you will find Iranians usually, traditionally, do not mourn the death of a loved one, because that belief is that the Atma is elevated to a higher level. You will also know that in the Hindu tradition, Sanatana Dharma, you'll see people beating their breasts and crying and things. They say, let your grief be quiet and inside, do not come out and make a racket, because your Atma is trying to move away from the body. And by your crying, if it is not a completely baked soul, it can be drawn towards the life again instead of being raised up on the, it's like snakes and ladders. You, instead of being raised up and going on your journey, you can have a fall. So, um, on the basis of the Parahar, everyone is responsible for their own deeds. So the symbol of this ancient Persian um, image of this winged person, disc with the person seated, the male figure in the center. The figure can be said to be Ahura Mazda, the supreme. And it is also used for other concepts like guardian angels. What is guardian angel? The guardian angels are the Amesha Spentas, qualities, power qualities, which give you these uh, achievements, or the guru, or the life after death. In Sanatana Dharma, it's called the God riding Vishnu on the Garuda. So this much for today. It's a long class. I don't even know the time. 5:56. They almost at 6 o'clock. I don't think we should go deeper, because you can go deeper and deeper and deeper, but that is something we each have to find within ourselves. And it doesn't matter who you follow, which cult or religion you follow. Just be honest with yourself, be righteous, follow Dharma, and offer the fruits of any of your actions to the divine. When we are chanting at the end of the day, when you finish so many chants, don't look for, now what will I get out of it? No, offer it to the divine, because he has given you the mantra. It doesn't belong to you. Guru has given you the mantra. He gave it to you because he realized it doesn't belong to him. It comes from the divine. He becomes a catalyst. It flows through you, and you have to give it to somebody else someday. So the fruits, give it back to the divine who gave it through so and so to you, and he will know where it has to go. And he or it, or whatever you want to call this, Ahura Mazda, or the Asura Vedas, or whatever name you call it, the divine beloved, or you want to call it the um, Allah, Khuda, call it by any name. This divinity is a consciousness that's beyond the understanding of the human mind. And the only way to be able um, to get in touch with the soul, which is a very strong emanation of the Paramatma, the Atma, is to learn to love the Paramatma, because everything that we have got here is what is given to us. Even our breath is not something that we can order at on demand. Now you will see people are paying for their breaths. That's another matter. People are struggling for their breath, and for oxygen they are paying. But even ordinarily, if you just hold your breath 1 minute, you will see that you cannot make it come when you want. You cannot let it go when you want. Even that is given to us. So in a sense, we are all beggars. And being beggars, we are being looked after by a very loving and compassionate divinity. So let us be dasas, servants of this divinity, by following the ethical path to start with. So Hari Om Tat Sat. So can we stop here just a minute before you finish? Listen to a song which somebody sent actually on Chandi Party yesterday, and that shows the passion of the Iranian for the Ahura Mazda and the way of life. I just want you to, Shivani, that song. If you feel like standing up, or if you feel tearful at the end of it, or you feel moved inside it, remember that that is Ahura Mazda, or the supreme consciousness moving something within you. So you look for something better in yourself.
Human beings are members of a whole, in creation of one essence and soul. If one member is afflicted with pain, other members uneasy will remain. If you have no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain.
سرزمینم خاک افسونگر دل خاورمیانه خاک تو تاریخ تو مردان کویت جاودانه من زن ایرانیم ایرانی از جنس تن تو هم غیورم هم صبورم طفلی از آبستن تو من زن ایرانی هم سایه و هم نسل شیری خواهر تهمینه و هم قصه پوران و پروین من زن ایرانیم اهل تمدن زاده پارس مثل دریا می خروشم من خلیجم تا ابد فارس من صدای ایرانم با ندای ایرانی قبله من ایرانم با فدای ایرانی در جهان ریشه داری باغ پربرگ و باری فرزندان کوروشی قرین افتخاری بر پاخیز ایرانی روان در خود زندانی ایران قلب جهان است تو در قلب جهانی من درد وطن دارم یک سینه سخن دارم من از پرچم ایران پوشینه به تن دارم.
We are the voice of Iran. We are all Nedas of Iran. We pray to Iran. We give our lives for Iran. We give our lives for Iran.
در این شهر نفسگیر این شهر پا به زنجیر از جور این تتارا بر لب رسید جانم در فصل جور و بیدار با سینه سینه فریاد من از صلح و آزادی ترانه ها میخوانم ترانه ها میخوانم در پاخیز ایرانی نمان در خود زندانی ایران قلب جهان است و در قلب جهانی سرزمینم خاک افسویم دل خاورمیانه خاک تو تاریخ تو مردان کویت جا
Hari Om Tat Sat.
Bye-bye.